Hi, this is Lynn Schnebley with Educating with Wisdom, and I'm the ambassador for Heaven's creating and protecting goddesses and archangels over life. I'm sorry this is so grainy. I've taken this a few times, and it's not uploading right into YouTube. On top of that, the powers that be kept shutting down my computer, and I'm sure I made it too long. So I'm going to try to make this pretty short for me. We're looking at the Noahide laws on the rainbow flag, which is what the covenant was about, and the appointment of Hillary Clinton as co-president. Because as I mentioned earlier, I was one of the people that went to the Republicans on October the 27th, 2016, showed my documents to the National, and the next day Mr. Comey came out and said that she was still under investigation. Now, I have some concerns that Hillary Clinton was being set up to be impeached anyway. So I'm going to get into that briefly, but because of everything that's happened in England, in the United States, the fact that Fiona Hill, who testified, definitely, I'm quite sure, has a penis. I've already reached out to the Russians, and I'll let you know shortly. Oh, basically because they have the double-headed ego with King St. George in it. They oversee the tree of life, I should say the tree of Mara, which had to do with the covenant of Sarah and Abraham. Stalin was one of the 7 Sagittarians during World War II. I'm also a Sagittarian. World War II had 7 Sagittarians that were all involved on the Allies. Winston Churchill, King George, Charles de Gaulle, McKinley for Australia, Canada. I said Franco already, and I said Stalin, and there were 7 altogether. Anyway, that's statistically impossible. So I figured and we've never actually gone to war against them. Plus, I knew that Hillary Clinton was being set up to be impeached, and Barack Obama, and he had made himself look great that year, and I mean, I just knew so much of what was going on. Plus, the Zionists were sitting in with her daughter and her husband, and Trump and his daughter and her husband, and they all got married within a year of each other. And I thought, oh, no. It's more about the Zionists. So they're actually, I believe, waiting for my deal to come out. But the LGBTQ, especially the gay community in the Vatican, doesn't want it at all. And quite possibly African liberation theology. I'm not sure. So let's say right off the bat, I had a vote for Mr. Trump, and I've gone to bat for him, and I agree with you. His personality can be absolutely caustic, and reading the Bible is dreadful if you're a feminist. But I have gone through it, and I've read things that I thought I am never going to read. And every time I read it in Hebrew, the Leningrad Codicy is in Russia. So there are all these things that the Russians are holding on to, which are, I mean, it's God, it's heaven. So let's talk about the Noahide, which, because like most Christians, what is the Noahide? Like, I didn't even know about it until this summer. I didn't know about a lot of things. I've spent the last 2 years, every time I go into someplace, it's like, oh no, please don't show me more. Please, God, don't show me more. I mean, it's bad enough before this. And of course, they have to tell you, the governments have to tell you how they cyberstalk, cyber monitor, and all those other things. They can see what you're doing just by the diffraction of the Wi-Fi hitting on you, and they can read what's going on. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. So what is the Noahide law? That actual actually, I want to get back to Hillary Clinton. She should just be appointed co-president. So this is one of the things I'm going to work for. At this point, the Vatican and the LGBTQ, especially the men, you can't get anything through. And they have their fingers on buttons that are very dangerous for people. So I must get that case in. I must. 2, Hillary Clinton and Mr. Trump should be able to come out with the truth without being penalized, and which is what my deal was all about. But the Vatican and the clergy do not really want to come clean with the Adam and Eve story, because you see, there was no fall. The fall came when Adam and Eve were separated. And I'm going to read that to you for a moment. They don't want to talk about it. They would rather just lie about it, because the Catholic Church, the Christian church, is actually developed not from Jesus and St. Paul, who weren't Nazarenes, which is what I am, but from Antioch. And the Christians had more to do with Horus and Adonis and Apollo than... Anyway, so I would like to take a look, and I'm going to read this to you and let you see it. Jesus never speaks of the fall. All right, and what St. Paul says, I'm not quite sure that was St. Paul or if it was put into him, but we do know that the tree of life needs to be offered from Ephesus, and Ephesus has to do with Hephaestus. So I'm reading from down here. I'm going to get my finger off of it. When Eve was still in Adam, death did not exist. When she was separated from him, death came into being. If he enters again and attains his former self, death will be no more. So that has to do with the condition of the soul. What are we looking at here? It is the Gospel of Philip. All right. Now, as we go in and we talk about things like the Shabbat, which is part of the seven, so there wasn't. What happened is that when our souls that were the XXXY being, when it separated, and now we have Ish and Ishah, we cannot continue in this way. We have to come back together. And as the brain research has come out, and the brains really are quite different between men and, they are the same, but men are more object related and more driven by the sun, because their sex cycle and their hormonal cycle is linked to the sun. It's on a rapid 24-hour period. The women are more linked to the moon. Now that brings me to something about the moon. Everybody thinks the moon is about Cancer. No, it isn't about Cancer. It's about the winter months, because that's when the moon is most important, and that's when you get most of your light from the moon. So it's not during Cancer. And that's why Artemis of Ephesus is really related to the Sagittarian, the Charon, and even into parts of Capricorn. I've got all that going on. So when you think of Artemis, when you think of when you look up at the stars, when you have the most amount of gazing, when life is the quietest, when you have to really contemplate things, when death has already occurred within nature in the northern hemisphere, this is during that 30-day period surrounding the winter solstice. So that is really the moon cycle. Now, when you get down into the southern hemisphere, it is the opposite way around, and it's important to understand that. The sun is really for the 15-day period in what we call Gemini, which are the twins, both male and female, and then it goes into the early 15-day period of Cancer. So that is really the sun. It is really not in August. It really isn't. And Amun-Ra and Zeus Amun-Ra, which the Greeks and also the Jews worshipped, is a god that has ram's ears. And that really, even though they say it's sun worshiping, it really came about during the 2,000-year epoch of Aries. And it really is about war and sex and acquisition and all these things. Prior to that, you have far more female-led deities that don't have anything with sex and oaths and death and those things, but are much more about creative and agriculture and life and sustaining, and they're not linked into all these other kind of whorish things. In fact, when you think of Venus, Venus was originally masculine. So there you go. Jupiter is actually more feminine than it is masculine. Women have slightly more DNA. We are the more positive sign. Men have slightly less DNA. They are the more negative sign. So there are real differences going on there. Now, I want to read something else to you, because it has to do with the Noahide And I first came into contact with this, with what I'm going to tell you about, because I'm 61. I just turned 61 on the 12th. I would have been 20, 21. My former fiance, way back when, he was doing a lot of reading on spirituality, Native American spirituality, and he handed me a piece, and we talked about the Star Brothers and things like that. But they said that when the Great Flood occurred, they were picked up by the Star Brothers with other people, and they hovered above the waters. Now, I read that all those years ago. Now we're going to read it here. Let's see if I can get it here, the Star Brothers. I think I've got it here. I'll turn you on pause for a moment. Hi, this is the Apocryphon of John. Notice there is the Mother, Father. Well, here's the Mother, Father, that and consistently the chief God in many of the Gnostic Gospels. Sometimes it's the Father, sometimes it's the Mother. And we're going to go where that thing is, that little star is. And he, the chief archon, and here we go. It's not as Moses said, they hid themselves in an ark, but they hid themselves in a place not only Noah, but many other people. We're going to call them Na'a because the original, there were no O's. Na'a, from the immovable race. And they went into a place and hid themselves in a luminous cloud. And Na'a recognized his authority, and she who belongs to the light was with him, having shone on them, because the chief archon had brought darkness upon the earth. Now, the chief archon are the people that don't want you to know right from wrong. So when they talk about the fall in the Garden of Eden, that is written from the perspective of Satan. Satan does not want you to know to wear your clothes. Satan does not want you to know right and wrong. And the reason why that was snuck in there is because the Greeks and the Romans thought the male body was absolutely beautiful, disliked females knowing anything, and they considered that bad. That's how it all happens. And that's why the Vatican has all these naked male bodies all over the place, and everything is about God the Father, God the Father, God the Father. And it's why they have 13 little penises going around, obelisks, which really do need to go back to Egypt because it belongs to Egypt. And it's why it's sitting in front of St. Peter's. I mean, these people are really demonic. So when you read these things, and I mean, it's just that I read it 40 years earlier when I was a young woman about the Native American myths, some of the Native American myths, and now here I am, and I don't read this until the late 1980s because it didn't even come out until like 1986. I think I read it in 1987. I read it right before Chelsea. I got pregnant with Chelsea. That was in 88. So I read it in 87. That's when I read it. I read all these new things that were dating back to other kinds of traditions that I'd learned about. And this is a whole, the Gnostic Gospels, that Nag Hammadi is all very new. And they never condemn Mary of Magdalene, never see. In fact, they call her his companion. If we look at the Adam and Eve story, and the church does not want to admit this because, well, when you're gay or you're men and you want to be polygamist, I'm not just picking on gay men. I'm talking about men that are unwilling to listen to Genesis. They are created as one entity. They are separated genetically into Ish and Isha, male and female, and there's only two. He is to cleave to her. That's matrilocality. He does not rule over her. That B means to rule in her. Rule in her with her desire. Okay? Not rule over, rule in with her desire. So it's matrilocality and rule in with her desire. That is a necessary element. And then they come together and their souls come together. And what the church, and nobody is really explicit about teaching kids about making love. Not that this is something that a kid should be doing, but I mean, I've actually had my soul reach up I felt this white light reach up and his come down inside of me. I mean, this is nothing like what you even teach about. And it's only happened a few times. I mean, okay, so, and that's because of the shortcomings of my former husband. So I have experienced that, and you can't just experience that by doing sodomy. It just doesn't happen. You've got to, you have to have that connection. There you go. And we need to talk about it because, and when that happened to me, I couldn't breathe anymore. I could feel that my soul and his had come down, that I had kind of left. And it wasn't Udo's. That was Andre, the same one that I did this thing, my former fiance. Yes, I'm not supposed to have committed fornication, and I did. And it's because nobody told me about these laws and what it was about. They just didn't tell me. The church lies. They don't even teach us about the Noahide. And so I experienced that with him. And Udo, of course, doesn't even believe he has much of a soul to begin with, so what can he do? So we're not even teaching things. So we're not teaching the complementarian parts of men and women. And I had to literally let go of him. My soul had to let go of him so I could start breathing again. It was incredible. I didn't know. So all these things are happening here, and we're not being explicit about this, and we're not being explicit about anything. I blame the church. We're coming into Christmas, and I really believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in him the way you do. That's not my job. My job is to bring the tree of life. The tree of life has to come from Ephesus, and they've done nothing but knock Ephesus about, because Ephesus is about Hepa and Artemis and how the Greeks augmented it into Artemis. But it's really Hephaestus, which is the Hurrians. And we know how important the Hurrians are because of Islam said that they were just going to die and have 72 Hurry women to have sex with nonstop. You know, we know they went in and decimated. We know how important the Hurrians are by how much everybody else hates them and is afraid of them. And they were a very pure race, mostly vegetarian, very much involved in trade. So that's going to be a whole different thing. Let's go in then and talk about this new flag. This flag. Let's go in. Come out of me. One of the reasons why I reached out to the Russians is because the Russians do have, notice this, Helios, Apollo, Zeus, Helios, we'll call them the slut gods. Not all gods. They became sluts during Aries, the age of Aries. We call them the slut gods. Here we go. The center of civilization of the Caucasus for the Hurrians, who honored it as the guardian of the tree of life. This is of course on the Russian coat of arms. They also have the Leningrad Codicy, which is the oldest and most complete Old Testament in the world. They are over the tree of Mara, which is, it is Jesse's tree where the shoots come up. How do you do? And that's in Israel. And they were one of the 7 that were involved in the helpful Sagittarians of World War II, which I have in another video. So we have this here. Let's talk about these commandments. So when we were last destroyed, these people, Olam Haba is really Alam Haba, which has to do, Haba has to do with the Hurrian goddess. And it actually says to bind Haba. They're not being honest. This is, the rainbow has 7 different lights that we see visibly to the eye. The Genesis flood. All right. And when I pick on them, I'm not just looking at homosexuals. I'm looking at the fornication that we were involved in. I am looking at, they look at sodomy. What else do they look at? So we should have the 7 in there. The 7 is also for the Shabbat, for the 7th day. They talk about the goddess Shabbat, but in fact it means oaths, and that 7, it deals with the oaths of the Noahide law, which is what nobody actually wants to admit to. So we should have this rainbow with a 7 that is in it, a rainbow with the tree of life and the 7 that's in it. This is a necessary thing. And we have to remember what the Noahide law is, because at this point, folks, we do not have a deal with God. The deal with God is you have to know what these Noahide laws. And what they don't like, and one of the reasons why they rejected St. Paul, who was a Nazarene, as was Jesus, is that they did not like, let's see if this opens up, they did not like that fornication was a sin. Do not eat of a living animal, do not, okay. And now God, in Micah, it says that we will call God by our own names, each one. And you have to have a just court of law. This is not actually what it is. St. Paul and Jesus tell you right off the bat. St. Paul is very clear. No fornication, no sodomy, no homosexuality, no adultery, no bestiality. St. Paul lays it right out. He's not kidding. And that's why nobody wanted to accept the reality of St. Paul. Okay? So that would also include the Mormons and people who only marry one wife legally but keep all those other married people and all the other things. It's all of that. Let's go in and take a look at, I just got my Egyptian goddess about two and a half weeks ago, Nut. I knew I wasn't Isis. I knew, like Haba, and that it's not about the sex, it's not about war, it's not about these kind of oaths, it's not about Aphrodite, it's all wrong. It's more like the Artemis of Ephesus. It's more of these pure goddesses. Now, this is really important because Nut, when I looked over here, she is over the Celeste. She's the water bearer. So we're really looking at an Aquarian goddess. We need to equate Nut with Aquarius. She also takes a look at lives that have been dead, and she births you in to your next life. And I'm telling you right now, folks, your next life does not have to be on earth. Here we go. She is older than Horus, Isis, and Set. In fact, Horus, who keeps being reborn, all right, she is not. She is in the cosmos. And again, she's the water bearer, and she has 3 squiggly lines underneath her. Just an awful lot like Aquarius. The sky, the stars, and cows. So we're really looking at something that came out more 2,000 years before we call them the slut gods developed. Here we go. Notice she has the stars, but all the stars are little people in there. So we're going to be replacing the Baphomet with the 5-edged star, with the stars, with the little people, and we're going to think about life on other planets, and they do not want us up there. So what happened is that when the sun dies, she eats it, it goes through her, and she gives birth, and it comes out the other end. She gives birth to all these other things, but she gives birth to the planets, and she's over it. And this is the goddess that's been given to me, because she is a rather pure goddess. And she is involved in that. Again, she has 3 squiggly lines. Here she is here. She is not a cow, but she is seen as giving life. And she doesn't deal with crappy, slutty gods. I mean, let's face it. Apollo's prophetess sits up on a mound, a tripod with her legs spread to take him into her vagina. I kid you not. That's what it says. It's disgusting. Apollo is a slutty god. So this was, I have my Artemis of Ephesus, my Guadalupe, of course, Kuan Yin, Lin, my name is Lin. Lin is the 12th for Frigg. I have the Sila, which is over corn, over grains, and that's where the Jews get the Sheila or the Shiloh, and the Sala, which is in Psalms. This is Sheila, and you'll see in the Lost Book of Nostradamus, she has a two-edged mace. She was in charge of corn and all grains. She was compassionate and in charge of all grains. She has the double mace. And it says with Judah, I believe it is Judah in Judah 49, when Isaac is given out his blessings, it says, nothing is going to leave Judah. And that is the constellation of Leo. Nothing is going to leave Judah, because he already tells him he's like this lion. Nothing will leave him until Sheila comes. And in 2011, as I was just whistleblowing and Obama got all my stuff online, and Obama's a Leo, and he wants to hold on to all of his power. Just as he's doing this, Virgo goes into Regulus, and that is where the stomping foot, she will stomp on the head of the serpent, the venomous serpent. By the way, the sign for father in Egypt, part of the signs for father in Egypt is a venomous serpent. Interesting. And when you go through the Lost Book of Nostradamus, you'll see the various types of cedar, and you'll see the scrolls being tied up. You'll see Nostradamus is like, he can't stand men, and neither did the god. And it's very different. And then you'll see the Artemis figure, and it's the one that has the lions that are down there. Leo actually is a female lion. It isn't a male lion. But the one with the lions down there is over the head of the church. So there you go. So the six-sided star now is no longer going to be for Aphrodite and Venus. The six-sided star now is going to be for Sheila. She's the six-sided star, and that is Virgo. And Virgo is now in Regulus. So there you go. Yeah. And the five-sided star, that will be one of the signs of Nut. I'm going to take all these evil characters that you've put out there and put in there. We're going to take them all away from you because you couldn't behave yourselves. So let's go in and take a look at some of these other now. Oh, I should also tell you, and then I need to finish. In terms of the Shabbat, because we need to have a contiguous 24-hour day of rest, 7 days, the Jewish people will take the deal. They have to take the deal. If the Noahide laws and the Shabbat goes out, the banking system has to take the deal. So does the Christian church. The Muslims will take it because it's going to just sort of fall out from underneath them. The Hindus will take it because they can have more of a working relationship with the rest of Europe and with Russia because they need their natural resources. And of course, Australia needs to be able to enter into Canada, and I cannot have all this sin going on at the same time. I mean, Fiona Hill has a penis, and she's busy talking about being a woman at the impeachment testimony. And not only that, but the Speaker of the House knows all this stuff, and we have a 37-year-old gay man who's married, who's only been a mayor, who's on the top of the leaderboard. Really? No, I would rather see Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton as co-presidents. I think our country's been through enough, and I think it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to put that out there to the embassies as well. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Oh, I want you to think about it for a moment. The Abraham deal with all of the land, no witnesses to any of that deal. there's so many things there's no witnesses to. I mean, my goodness gracious, this just never stand up in a court of law. Holy smokes. And the whole Bethlehem thing. I mean, I always thought he was born. I mean, I thought Nazareth made more sense, but I always believed in Jesus, and I loved Christmas music. I'm a classically trained musician. How do you not love Christmas? But if we think about Bethlehem, it had to be in Bethlehem because it's mentioned in Micah, but it's the daughter of Zion, which is hurry and how do you do, which is actually going to, with God, stamp your swords into plowshares. But if we think about Bethlehem and Mary having to go down there in order to fulfill certain things, well, how come he didn't stay with any of his family or friends? And when the baby was born, why didn't any of his family and friends show up? I mean, they had to go down there because Joseph is from there. And then if he had children in a prior marriage, and that's why there are these other children, like James, well, where are the children on this trip? And how did they take off and just go to Egypt? And what happened to his kids? I mean, no. Nazareth was very important because it's the Nasara, the seed of Sarah, and they are a totally different group than the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which are just corrupt Ammonites. That's a different story that I already have out there. So with that in mind, I still believe in Jesus. I just don't believe in all that other garbage. And now we have to think of that flag. We're going to have our Noahide flag, our covenant with God. We're going to remember why we keep getting destroyed, why heaven or space does not want us to join them. We're going to take our slutty gods out and our slutty goddesses out, and we're going to put these others in there. And Merry Christmas. And coming from one of the moon people, because that's when we shine the most.